My name is Luna. At 40, I find myself in a whirlwind I never anticipated, caught in a moment that feels both exhilarating and wrong. The tale I'm about to share may catch many off guard, perhaps even you. To the world, my life appeared to be a perfect fairy tale. A penthouse nestled in the vibrant pulse of Manhattan, filled with extravagant gatherings, and a husband revered as a leading surgeon. They all believed I had it all, but beneath the shimmering surface lay a secret too raw to reveal. Isolation. Ethan, my husband, felt like a stranger in the very space we once shared so intimately. Endless hours spent in the operating room, followed by fleeting moments stolen away for international conferences. Eventually, the nights he returned became a precious rarity. Our exchanges dwindled, reduced to mere discussions of work commitments and the weight of monthly expenses. On a still April afternoon, with soft sunlight casting gentle shadows in the room, a message from Ethan lit up my phone. Urgent operation. I might not make it home until later. Please, don't hold dinner for me. I felt a strange sense of inevitability. This occurred nearly every day. I placed my phone on the table, a heavy sigh escaping my lips as I pondered, when will this longing finally fade away? The doorbell chimed, pulling me from my reverie. I stepped forward, my heart racing as I turned the handle and pushed the door open. There he was, Richard, Ethan's younger brother, standing before me, a mix of longing and unspoken tension hanging in the air between us. He had just come back from Los Angeles, the echoes of his documentary still lingering in the air, a bittersweet reminder of what he left behind. Mason had tousled dark hair that hinted at a rebellious spirit, eyes that held a depth of unspoken thoughts, and broad shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of uncharted desires, all wrapped in a well-loved leather jacket. Claire. Mason's smile lit up the room, a spark that felt both thrilling and dangerous. New York pulses with its familiar disorder, doesn't it? I managed a weary smile, yet Mason's presence swept through the cold, desolate apartment like a breath of life, igniting something deep within me. Welcome back, Mason, I whispered, my heart racing at the sight of him. As Mason stepped in, an electric tension filled the air, igniting something deep within me. The heavy silence that often enveloped the apartment began to dissipate, leaving room for something unspoken yet electric in the air. Mason always exuded an intriguing aura, soft yet deeply reflective. A few moments later, as I poured the coffee, a voice echoed from the doorway. Did anyone miss me? I turned around and found myself face to face with Thomas, Ethan's best friend, a spark of something unspoken hanging in the air between us. Dylan appeared transformed since the last time our paths crossed. His hair fell in tousled waves, a hint of mischief dancing in his eyes behind dark sunglasses, and he donned a rugged, weathered jacket that whispered of untold stories. Dylan. I laughed softly, my heart racing as I rushed to embrace him. I believed you were still in Paris. Dylan shrugged, a hint of defiance in his voice as he declared that Paris was simply too mundane for his taste. New York feels like a heartbeat, a place where every corner whispers secrets and every moment is charged with unspoken desires. He sank into the chair, a wide smile spreading across his face, and it felt like I had arrived at the perfect moment. Where's my coffee, love? Dylan had that effortless charm, radiating warmth and vitality, as if he had never truly departed from my heart. In that intimate space, a rush of warmth enveloped me, stirring emotions I thought had long been buried. We lost ourselves in conversation for hours, sharing tales of Dylan's escapades in France and the allure of Mason's new film project. After what felt like an eternity, a spark ignited within me, awakening emotions I thought were lost forever. In that fleeting moment, uncertainty loomed, yet I felt an undeniable shift within me, knowing that Mason and Dylan would forever alter the course of my existence. That evening, as the warm golden light enveloped the room, Mason leaned back in the chair, his eyes lost in thought as he gazed out the large window, where the twinkling city lights danced like secrets waiting to be uncovered. Dylan sat across from him, a relaxed smile gracing his lips, fingers tapping softly to the music that filled the air, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken tension. Claire, have you ever considered returning to the world of writing? Mason's voice pierced the silence, soft yet charged with unspoken tension. Mason's question pierced through my memories, a gentle yet haunting touch that stirred emotions I thought were buried deep. Before I said I do to Ethan, I was a celebrated journalist, crafting piercing and thought-provoking pieces that captured the essence of New York's vibrant culture and its intriguing inhabitants. But being with Ethan had forced me to surrender everything to embody the ideal partner. I let out a soft laugh, yet it was tinged with a hint of sorrow. Do you honestly believe I can create something meaningful after wandering aimlessly through this empty space? Mason hesitated, the silence heavy with unspoken words. His gaze lingered on me, a mix of tenderness and unspoken longing that sent shivers down my spine. Within you lies a universe, Claire, filled with secrets and unspoken desires. That's what truly counts. Dylan arched an eyebrow, shattering the tension that hung in the air. I see where Mason is coming from, but I believe there's more to it than simply putting pen to paper. You must find a way to truly exist. When was the last time you let your heart sway to the rhythm of a forbidden moment? I let out a breathless laugh, shaking my head in disbelief. Dylan had a knack for weaving joy into the air, even when shadows lingered just out of sight. Yet, beneath the surface, his words resonated within me, reverberating like a haunting melody in the quiet corners of my soul. As the clock chimed 9 p.m., Dylan rose abruptly, a storm of emotions swirling within him. Come on, play a song that stirs the heart. We can't linger in this moment forever. Before I could voice my hesitation, he strode to the control panel and let the sultry notes of an upbeat jazz song fill the air. Dylan turned around, his hand outstretched toward me, a playful glint in his eyes that sent a thrill through my heart. A great song calls for movement, urging you to rise and feel its pulse in your veins. Claire, we must dance now. I shook my head, a smile tugging at my lips, yet Dylan's fervor was impossible to ignore. As our fingers intertwined, we took our tentative first steps across the floor, the air thick with unspoken tension. Dylan twirled me effortlessly, his hands firm yet tender, and I couldn't help but laugh, caught in the thrill of the moment. Mason lingered in the shadows, his gaze heavy with unspoken thoughts, before he abruptly rose to his feet. He approached me, his fingers brushing against my waist with a tenderness that sent shivers down my spine. You wouldn't dare keep me from sharing in this thrill, would you? He smiled gently, yet there was a storm of emotions swirling in his gaze. Dylan's laughter echoed, a sound both joyous and tinged with something deeper, something that felt just out of reach. Mason, when did you learn to weave such magic with your words? Amidst the laughter and the music, I found myself enveloped by two men, each so distinct yet somehow beautifully intertwined in their presence. Dylan, with his captivating charm and undeniable spark, drew me away from the shadows of my existence. Mason, with his serene demeanor, had a way of making me feel truly understood, as if he could sense the depths of my concealed heartache. In their embrace, my heart raced, each pulse echoing the rhythm of the music that surrounded us. The way our eyes met sent shivers through me, as if I were melting away into the intensity of that fleeting moment. A realm filled with melodies, joyous laughter, and a feeling that caught me off guard, stirring something deep within me. As the melody softened, Mason drew near, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered secrets meant only for us. Claire, there's something about your smile that feels like a secret shared just between us. Dylan drew me in from behind, his voice a gentle whisper, you look so alive. Have you ever realized just how captivating you become when you surrender to the moment? I was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions, yet my gaze remained locked on them, unable to break free. Their words pierced through the veil of my past, revealing a piece of me I thought I had lost forever in the shadows of my long marriage. In their presence, I experienced a whirlwind of emotions, feeling adrift yet anchored all at once. I tried to resist, but my heart had other plans, urging me toward the edge of what I knew was right. Why not embrace your desires just this once? That night, I felt the weight of change in the air, a shift that whispered of uncharted paths ahead. And there was no turning back now. The soft jazz lingered in the air, a haunting backdrop to the unspoken tension that filled the room, drowning out the melody that once wrapped around us. The echoes of laughter and the rhythm of dancing feet had vanished into silence. The air was thick with unspoken tension, illuminated by the soft glow of city lights filtering through the shadows. Mason stood just inches away, his intense gaze locking onto mine, as if he could peer into the very depths of my being. His hands cradled my arm softly, the heat from his skin igniting a slow, smoldering fire within me that left me quaking. "Are you aware? I've always dreamed of the moment you'd finally embrace your own desires," Mason murmured, his voice soft and tender, sending my heart racing uncontrollably. Before I could respond, Dylan moved in closer from behind, his hand resting on my shoulder, a touch that was both gentle and commanding. "Claire," Dylan murmured softly, his breath a tantalizing warmth against my neck, sending shivers through my entire being. "Let go of your fears and embrace the truth of your heart." I shut my eyes, battling the tumult of feelings that threatened to overwhelm me. But when I opened them again, all I could see were Mason's gentle gaze and Dylan's smile that danced between playful and knowing. Mason inched closer, his breath a warm whisper against my cheek, igniting a spark of something dangerously thrilling between us. I longed to retreat, to cling to logic, yet my heart murmured that the moment had slipped away. Mason's kiss was a gentle whisper, yet it ignited a fire within me that consumed every part of my being. His lips were tender, caressing, yet they held an intense desire that had simmered beneath the surface for far too long. Time hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words. From behind, Dylan moved in closer, enveloping me in his arms, a tender embrace that felt both protective and electric, a wordless promise hanging in the air. His solid chest pressed against my back, the steady beat of his heart syncing with the wild thumping of my own. "Claire," Dylan's voice wrapped around me, a soothing melody that stirred something deep within, igniting a thrill that felt both exhilarating and dangerous. He leaned in, his lips brushing gently against my hair, a tender moment that felt both sweet and dangerously intimate. I found myself lost in a haze, unable to discern the boundaries of right and wrong. In that fleeting instant, I felt undeniably alive, a woman overflowing with a desperate yearning for love and connection. Mason's hand glided from my arm to my waist, his touch a blend of tenderness and strength, as if to declare that I was meant to be here, in this fleeting moment with him. Dylan lingered just behind me, his breath warm and charged with longing as it caressed the nape of my neck, igniting every nerve in my body. "Mason," I breathed out, overwhelmed by the heat enveloping me from every direction. Dylan drew closer, his breath warm against my ear, sending shivers down my spine. "We have but one chance at this, Claire." As a whirlwind of feelings engulfed me, I turned to confront them both. The last barrier of my sanity shattered entirely. I had breached the barrier I had carefully constructed to shield my heart. Mason's fingers tangled in my hair, drawing me nearer as our lips met in a passionate embrace. Dylan's fingers brushed softly against my shoulder, his gaze intense, as if he were etching this fleeting moment into his memory forever. In that moment, it wasn't merely the warmth of our bodies pressed together. It was an unspoken bond, a profound intertwining of our spirits, a delicate balance that the three of us shared in silence. In that moment, the world dissolved around us, and all that remained was the frantic rhythm of our breaths and the thunderous beat of my heart echoing in the stillness of the room. Their warmth enveloped me, erasing every rule and fear I had ever held onto. I shut my eyes, allowing the intense feelings I had hidden away to wash over me. Every breath, every heartbeat resonated deep within me, a haunting reminder of the unspoken connection that lingered in the air. Tonight, everything felt unrestrained. As silence enveloped the room, I leaned against Mason, my head finding a home on his shoulder, my eyes barely open, lost in the shimmering allure of the New York skyline. Dylan leaned in, his lips brushing softly against my forehead, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding enveloped us all. Everything had changed, and there was no turning back to the past. The room was enveloped in a hush, the slow notes of jazz weaving through the air like a secret whisper. The city lights outside the glass windows shimmer softly, twinkling like secrets waiting to be uncovered. Yet, all I could focus on were the two men standing close by, their presence stirring something deep within me. I found myself questioning my choices, wondering what path I was on. Is this truly happening? Mason's hand lingered on my waist, the heat of his touch anchoring me to the present yet drawing me into a surreal fantasy. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, wild and tumultuous, like the rhythm of a forbidden desire. His eyes lingered on my face, a mix of tenderness and heat, igniting a fire that consumed every ounce of my logic. Dylan's arm lingered around me, a tender embrace that sent shivers down my spine, his breath a warm whisper against my hair. The intensity of that closeness enveloped me, a sensation that felt like destiny, as if I had been meant for this moment all along, even when I had been blind to it. "Claire," Mason murmured, his voice a gentle caress, drawing me into a world brimming with desire and unspoken yearnings. Dylan leaned in, his breath warm against my ear, sending shivers down my spine. "What thoughts are swirling in your mind?" he asked, his voice laced with an undeniable confidence, as if he held the answer in the depths of his heart, waiting for me to catch up. I felt a surge of uncertainty, the words caught in my throat, longing to be spoken but held back by an invisible barrier. I found myself lost in a haze of uncertainty, torn between what I knew and what my heart yearned for. My thoughts were tangled, yet my heart had given in entirely. Mason's fingers caressed my cheek softly, his gaze burning with an unspoken longing. His touch was gentle, yet I sensed the delicate tension lurking just beneath the surface. He leaned in, our lips almost brushing once more, the air thick with unspoken desire. This time, there was only resolve. His kiss held a fierce tenderness, as if he were channeling every unspoken feeling into a quiet, yet powerful melody. I found myself unable to hold back. I surrendered completely to the intoxicating embrace of Mason's warmth. Time hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words and lingering glances. All that remained was the frantic beat of my heart and the way his embrace enveloped me completely. Yet, Dylan lingered in my thoughts, an undeniable presence I couldn't shake off. He moved nearer, his gaze still playful, yet now tinged with a depth of intensity and unspoken longing. "Promise you won't forget me, Claire," Dylan murmured, his voice a soft, irresistible whisper that lingered in the air. I turned to look at him, and Dylan drew me into a close embrace, his warm smile melting away all my doubts and fears. The heat radiated from his chest, drawing me closer as his fingers gently lifted my chin. Then, his kiss crashed over me like a tempest, erasing every line I had ever drawn. In their presence, I drifted like a sleepwalker, unknowingly treading on lines that should never be crossed. I had transformed into someone who embraced the thrill of unexpected connections, where each dawn held the promise of something more, something thrillingly out of reach. I was transformed, a woman yearning to embrace every intense feeling that stirred within me. Mason gently grasped my hand, drawing me into his embrace again, his eyes holding mine with an intensity that suggested he wished to imprint this moment in his heart for all time. Dylan stood near, his fingers brushing softly against my shoulder, creating a melody that seemed to belong solely to the two of us, wrapped in a moment that felt both thrilling and wrong. Our ragged breaths mingled in the stillness of the room, and their touches transcended mere physicality, resonating with unvoiced secrets. The intensity in the air was so palpable that I could almost feel myself dissolving into it. I shut my eyes, yielding to the rush of every feeling. Time slipped away from me, lost in the haze of our secret moments. All I knew was that I was completely lost in their embrace, but deep down, a whisper of doubt lingered in my mind. "Claire, is this truly what your heart desires? What are you up to?" I opened my eyes and found Mason and Dylan gazing at me, their eyes brimming with affection yet tinged with concern, as if they were afraid I might pull away or shatter this fragile moment. But as our gazes locked, I felt an unwavering certainty within me, free of any regrets. I murmured, my voice a gentle caress yet unwavering, "I've never experienced anything so profound before." The air was thick with tension, our breaths mingling as the rhythm of our hearts echoed in the stillness. In that instant, I realized there was no turning back. I had stepped into uncharted territory, and there was no turning back now. I sank into the couch, the outside world fading away, leaving only the intoxicating warmth of Mason and Dylan beside me. Mason drew me close, his embrace enveloping me in a tender promise, a quiet comfort that felt both exhilarating and wrong. On the other side, Dylan sat close, his eyes shimmering with an unnamed emotion, tender yet tinged with a hint of danger, sincere in a way that made the air between them crackle with unspoken possibilities. I tilted my head back and closed my eyes, surrendering to that fleeting moment of tranquility that coursed through me, igniting a warmth I dared not fully embrace. For the first time in years, a warmth filled the space where loneliness once lingered. This moment was mine, wrapped in their warmth. As I opened my eyes and met Mason's gaze, then Dylan's, a tumult of emotions crashed over me, each one more intense than the last. Could this be what true happiness feels like? Or is this merely a momentary refuge from the aching solitude of the world around us? Mason's fingers gently tangled in my hair, his eyes shimmering with a longing that felt both tender and dangerous. Claire, don't overthink it. Just feel that we're here, standing close to you, ready to support you through it all. His soft whispers wrapped around me like a secret, drawing me into a world of longing, yet sending shivers of apprehension through my heart. Dylan's voice, low and intimate, shattered the stillness between them. There are moments when we must choose our own path, Claire. Is it a mistake to chase after a fleeting moment that ignites your very soul? I turned to look at him, and Dylan's gaze pierced through my very soul, unraveling the secrets I dared not speak. But as I stood before him and Mason, the unspoken dread inside me sharpened into focus. I felt an undeniable thrill in their presence. I found myself trembling at the edge of my own heart, terrified that this intoxicating connection was merely a fleeting fantasy, destined to dissolve with the dawn's embrace. I chuckled softly, yet beneath that sound lingered a sense of something unspoken, a weight that made the moment feel both tender and elusive. Dylan's brows knitted together, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken tension hanging between them. What thoughts are swirling in your mind, Claire? For a fleeting second, I paused, my breath catching as I leaned in to whisper. I find myself torn, uncertain of the path ahead. I'm terrified that one day I'll open my eyes and find it all vanished like a fleeting fantasy. Mason's hand enveloped mine, his touch warm and electric, sending shivers through me as I felt the tremor of uncertainty between us. This is real, Claire, he whispered, his voice laced with longing. Your emotions are undeniable. Dylan settled next to me, his eyes holding a weight that felt both intense and unspoken. Claire, while we can't change everything in your world, we can promise you this. You don't have to navigate it all by yourself. Those words cut deep, resonating with a haunting intensity that stirred something forbidden within me. In an instant, a tear escaped, tracing a path down my cheek. It felt like an eternity since tears had graced my cheeks. Perhaps it was during one of those desolate evenings in this frigid apartment, while Ethan had been gone for what felt like an eternity. The rush of affection, the warmth of a gentle touch, and the depth of understanding crashed over me like a tidal wave, leaving behind a haunting stillness filled with conflicting emotions. I found myself standing at the edge of something thrilling and dangerous, my heart racing with the thrill of the unknown. For once, the weight of consequences felt light, and all I wanted was to dive into the moment unafraid. Mason brushed the tear from my cheek with a tenderness that made my heart race. Don't think about tomorrow, Claire, he whispered, his voice laced with an intensity that felt both comforting and dangerous. In this moment, we exist together. In each other's arms, they found solace, a connection that felt both exhilarating and wrong. The world around them faded, leaving only the intensity of their shared moments, where every glance held a promise and every touch ignited a fire they knew they shouldn't be playing with. Dylan's smile was barely there, a whisper of warmth in a moment that felt charged with unspoken truths. And that's all that matters, he said, his voice low and heavy with meaning. I nodded gently, allowing myself to be enveloped by the moment again, yet beneath it all, a voice lingered in my thoughts, soft and insistent. What will unfold when the night draws to a close? Will the dawns erase all that we've shared? I found myself at a crossroads, uncertain of what lay ahead, yet I understood that this moment would forever be etched in my heart. In that moment, I discovered a spark that ignited my soul, breaking free from the chains of a past that had left me invisible, yearning for a love that was always just out of reach. In that fleeting instant, I understood that I had crossed into uncharted territory, leaving behind the familiar and embracing the unknown, with no chance of returning to the past. The morning light filtered softly through the delicate curtains, casting a gentle glow over the inviting wooden floor. The city stirred, a symphony of car horns and hurried footsteps echoing through the bustling streets, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. Yet in this hushed space, every second stretched, heavy with unspoken feelings. I opened my eyes, the gentle warmth of the sun forcing me to confront the bittersweet truth that lingered just beyond my reach. Mason lay beside me, his breath a soft melody, coaxing me into a dreamlike state, where reality blurred and the world outside faded away. Dylan reclined on the sofa, his eyelids fluttering as if caught between dreams and reality, yet I could feel the tension in the air, knowing he was still aware of my presence. My heart ached as the weight of my surroundings enveloped me in the quiet aftermath of a night filled with unspoken desires. What have I done to deserve this? The thought lingered in my mind, a haunting whisper in the silence, stirring emotions I dared not confront. I shifted just a bit, desperate to remain silent, but the moment my fingers brushed against the jacket resting on the chair, Mason's eyes fluttered open. His gaze held a lingering tenderness, yet beneath it lay a subtle shift, no longer wrapped in the dreamy haze of the previous night, but now touched by a hint of unease. "Good morning," Mason murmured, his voice low and tantalizing. I offered a subtle nod and a faint smile, yet within me, a tempest of feelings raged. Dylan shifted, sitting upright, his gaze piercing and filled with an intensity that made my heart race as he looked at me. "Are you really okay?" Dylan inquired, his gaze searching mine, as if he were attempting to unravel the tangled emotions behind my hesitant demeanor. I longed to respond, to assure them that everything was all right. But how could I, when my heart was a tangled mess of uncertainty? The air thickened with unspoken words as our eyes locked, a tension that felt both thrilling and dangerous. The air was thick with unspoken words, the lightness of laughter replaced by a heavy silence that lingered between them. Our eyes met in fleeting moments, heavy with unspoken tension, each of us yearning to bridge the gap yet unsure how to shatter the stillness that enveloped us. Mason moved in, his hand brushing softly against my shoulder, sending a shiver down my spine. "Claire, my heart races at the mere thought of you. Your silence speaks volumes. This is undeniably tangled." Dylan rose, brushing off his jacket, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. "Yeah, but the last thing I want is to catch a glimpse of regret in your gaze." I gazed at Dylan, my heart racing with unspoken feelings. His typical playful spark had vanished, giving way to an unexpected depth of emotion. His words pierced my heart, leaving a raw ache in their wake. Longing? I questioned my heart. Is there a part of me that wishes things were different? Or am I simply terrified of these emotions I've never allowed myself to confront? Silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words. I rose and donned my jacket, a desperate attempt to guard myself against the weight of their eyes. Mason moved closer, his lips parting as if to speak, yet he faltered, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air, threatening to break the delicate spell that enveloped us. Dylan slipped his hands into his jacket pockets, casting a glance over his shoulder, as if concealing a secret that burned within him. The once expansive room now closed in around them, a heavy silence thickening the air. Each fleeting look, each subtle gesture ignited a whirlwind of feelings within me, a mix of longing and uncertainty that felt both exhilarating and wrong. I averted my gaze and moved toward the expansive window, my heart racing as I watched the lively throng below. The world outside moved forward, oblivious to the secrets that lingered in the shadows. Yet within me, everything had transformed utterly. Mason and Dylan stood on opposite sides of the room, each a magnetic pull on my heart, igniting a tension that felt both exhilarating and wrong. I found myself caught in a whirlwind, not merely in body but deep within my heart. Claire, a name that lingers in the air, heavy with unspoken desires and the thrill of what could be. Mason's voice broke the silence, low and filled with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. You can take your time, there's no rush to make a choice at this moment. Dylan moved in, yet maintained a delicate space between us, as if he feared the weight of expectation might shatter the moment. Take all the time you need. But always keep in mind, we can't bear to see you in pain or burdened by guilt any longer. Dylan's words struck a chord deep within me, threatening to spill over into a flood of emotions. All the secrets I had tucked away, my loneliness, the deep longing to be loved and truly understood, were now exposed before these two men in a way that felt achingly vulnerable. I turned back to confront them. The tension in our gaze was more than a reflection of the past. It was a fragile web of unspoken emotions, each one teetering on the edge, ready to break with the slightest whisper. My heart raced as I opened my mouth, but the only words that escaped were a soft plea for time. Mason nodded, his gaze filled with a tender intensity that spoke volumes. Dylan let out a soft breath, his silence heavy with unspoken words, leaving the air thick with tension. The air thickened with unspoken words, a heavy pause enveloping them. Yet, this time, it felt light. It felt like a fleeting moment, a breath held tight before we confronted the undeniable reality of what lay ahead. I shut my eyes, inhaling deeply, feeling the weight of unspoken desires swirl around me. I felt it deep within me. This was more than the conclusion of a long night. It was the dawn of something thrilling and uncharted in my life. I stood by the expansive window. The towering skyscrapers in the distance felt like silent sentinels, guarding secrets that whispered of longing and unspoken desires. The distant roar of cars and blaring horns faded into a soft murmur, as if the world outside was a secret kept behind the thick glass. In this intimate space, it was only Mason, Dylan, and me, tangled in feelings that defied expression. I pressed my palms together, fighting to maintain my composure. Images from the previous night lingered in my thoughts, each moment unfolding with a haunting intensity. The stolen glances, the shared laughter, the fleeting touches that sent my heart into a whirlwind. Claire, you must take action. Nothing will ever be the same again. Mason moved in, his gaze soft yet laced with concern. His hand rested gently on my shoulder, his voice a tender whisper laced with unspoken tension. Claire, we can't linger in this uncertain space for eternity. You're aware of that, aren't you? As I gazed into his eyes, I felt a rush of emotions, a connection that seemed both profound and perilous. Dylan stood behind me, his gaze intense and charged with unspoken feelings. Instead, there was a stillness, a trepidation he masked with a delicate smile. I understand, I whispered, my voice soft yet unwavering. Dylan stepped closer, his fingers intertwining with mine, sending a shiver of warmth through my body. We can't let you take any risks that could break you, Claire. His words wrapped around me, their honesty piercing through the air, intensifying the ache in my heart. I stepped back from their touch, moving toward the heart of the room, as if seeking to create a sanctuary just for me. Every step was laden with the intensity of feelings I couldn't quite shake off. After years of solitude, I finally discovered a connection that filled the void in my heart, yet here I was, faced with a heart-wrenching choice that could change everything. Mason and Dylan awakened something within me that I believed was long gone. Yet, deep down, I understood that if we carried on this way, it would all inevitably unravel. It's not solely about my desires. Their hearts are entwined in this too. We can't keep this a secret for much longer, I murmured, barely audible to my own ears. Mason's gaze lingered, a quiet understanding passing between them. I understand, and whatever path you choose, my respect for you will remain unwavering. Dylan moved in, his gaze shimmering with a touch of melancholy, yet unwavering in its earnestness. "Claire, you deserve to embrace your emotions fully. All I desire is for you to let go of regret and embrace what could be." His words pierced my heart, a bittersweet ache that both wounded and freed me. I raised my gaze, and for the first time in ages, a fierce clarity surged within me, urging me toward a path I knew I had to take. I inhaled sharply, gathering my courage as I turned to meet their gaze. My voice was a gentle whisper, yet each word carried a weight that lingered in the air. I refused to hide in the darkness any longer. This truth can no longer be hidden away. And if we keep going down this path, we might end up losing one another forever. Mason and Dylan gazed at me, their eyes brimming with unspoken emotions and longing. I moved closer to Mason, my fingers brushing softly against his cheek. What we share will forever hold a special place in my heart. But now, I must forge my own way. Dylan's gaze captured mine, his lips hovering just apart, as if words were on the tip of his tongue, yet he remained quiet. I leaned in, my lips brushing against his cheek in a tender, lingering moment that felt both sweet and dangerously intimate. "Your reminder of my worthiness to be loved means everything to me." The air was thick with unspoken words as I hesitated, casting a lingering glance back at them before finally turning away, heart racing as I approached the door. Mason offered a subtle nod, while Dylan remained frozen, his gaze locked onto me, betraying the deep sorrow that lingered in his eyes. I opened the door and stepped outside, the morning light brushing against my skin, igniting a spark of something I knew I shouldn't feel. The cool morning breeze tangled in my hair, yet a forbidden warmth ignited within me, stirring emotions I dared not acknowledge. The intoxicating thrill of liberation, the boldness of confronting my true self at last. I strolled through the bustling street, the throng of people hurrying by, each lost in their own world, while my heart raced with unspoken desires. I remained Luna, yet I had shed the shadows of the woman I once was. I had ventured into uncharted territory, embraced my feelings, stumbled along the way, and remained authentic to my heart. Uncertainty loomed ahead, yet a spark ignited within me, whispering that this path was merely the first step of an exhilarating adventure. And no matter what unfolded, I would always carry the memory of these men, the ones who guided me back to the essence of who I truly am in this expansive universe. In my thoughts, Mason's voice lingered like a haunting melody, stirring emotions I dared not confront. "As long as you embrace your true self, that alone is a triumph." I walked down the sunlit street, a soft smile playing on my lips, my heart a tumult of longing and unspoken dreams for what lay ahead.